Hello and happy Tuesday. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us for the third and final chapter of our three-part series, How to Make Google Love Your Website in 2021. Today, Matt Tate is going to talk to us about site structure, page speed, and user experience, three very important elements if you want Google to show your website all the love. So just some housekeeping stuff. If you have any questions, just raise your hand with a little icon on Zoom, or you can just type the question into chat and I will get to it just as soon as I can. So without further ado, let's get into it, Matt.
All righty. Let me show my screen.
Yep, it looks good.
That's good. All right. Let me make sure everything's working here. There it is. All right, in all my glory. All right, so today we're going to be talking about a variety of things, a little bit about site clutter, user experience, page speed, a little bit about some wireframing, kind of a unique concept, fairly simplistic when you really boil it down to its core, but it's all good. And so at the end of this, you should kind of understand the layout of your website, some of the functionality within DSS that I guarantee you half of you are not actually taking advantage of, and lose out on a little bit of SEO love because of it. So let's start with a very simplistic concept that, because a lot of this, I don't know how many of you have a redesign or have redone your websites, but one of the big things with DSS and with Google moving forward is having a redesign of your current website. So many of you who have really old websites, this is going to be really helpful. Some of you who have newer websites who just hasn't really used them in a while, this will also be helpful. This is just a way for you to kind of think about this.
Also a way to keep it clean so that you don't have to go through. Yeah.
I have principles for you to kind of think about. So website wireframing, pretty simple. It's just a visual framework or the blueprint of your website. So this is helpful to people who haven't done a redesign in a while. Also good for people who maybe just have never done this or never thought about how to lay out pages. And I'm going to show you a beautiful example that I have made for you in a minute. So it's kind of just the overall framework, and this will be very helpful with DSS, but it's typically done in simple shapes and text. So let me show you mine. So something as simple as this right here, where you kind of take all the different elements on your page and you kind of think about how it's laid out. Now, once again, helpful in the pre-design, but also once you have your website, you can kind of lay out different elements and pages as well. But much like the blueprints for a house, you don't include the details, colors, fonts, all this stuff. You're really just thinking about the user experience. How is this information laid out? Is it in a logical fashion that the information is laid out on a page? When they come in, what information they go to? The optimum time to do it, I think I said, was before the website is launched. So if you guys are in the process, you've done it before, it is great. I have literally had, I believe it was Van Smith sent us like it was like a book almost of pictures of yellow pad paper where he drew it by hand to do that. So if any of you have this vision and you find that is easier for you to lay out the vision, I know our project managers will appreciate it. Or if you've got a newer website and you've seen some of our other sites and you like the way some of them's laid out, draw it out or just take some screenshots. That's another thing you could do, is take screenshots of different elements, and I'll go through that in a second, and you can kind of more visually do that. But just kind of a quick little idea, wireframing, you hear it. It's really just the layout of your page. But before we get some details, let's talk about some foundational information. You've already got your website. Everyone on here already has a website. So kind of think about your foundations. Has it been more than 2 years since you got a website redesign? Because I'm going to show you DSS has more tools for user experience within the system that we have added that some older websites simply do not have access to, as well as it's very important for Google page speed. Do you even know what current elements you have on your page, on your website? I will guarantee you a lot of you don't even know what you currently have. And do you know if whether or not DSS has new elements that you can add to your current website? So quick example of that. Say some people got a little bit older website. Our friend, Mr. Stephen Booker here, who will be upgrading eventually, a little bit older sites. We got Kevin McManus here on a slightly older little version 4 website. Then we've got our friends at the Consumer Law Group on a slightly newer version of the website. So if you have that 2-column one, if you got one that looks like Kevin, or you have one that looks like Mr. Gale here, you have different tools in DSS that you can actually use depending on what version that you have. But there are also different elements on a website that you may not have. Biggest ones I see on a newer website that goes towards user experience, and we added it for that, is kind of a custom call to action button. So do you have a custom panel that just kind of breaks up in the middle of the page that has a customized phrasing? Like John has a great one here. Need help. It's got a call to action that is relevant to his practice area. It's got kind of a ghosted image of the the state. I mean, you can customize these things to say, start your relief today. If you're a bankruptcy attorney, some of you may have this, and it may just say submit. Well, there are little things we can do like that to better optimize for the user experience, which I will get into in a little bit more never mind. Let me go back to this. So a couple other things. So we've got this unique call to action. We've got new ways to display the books. Some of you might just have like one set book, or you may have that panel that kind of changes the book that's in the center. You may have started your website, not had books, added books, didn't know that you can add this to your website. So there are certain elements like this offer panel, why choose us panel. Big popular one most of you don't have but could use is this video panel. So you need to understand what elements you currently have on your page, because we may be able to add some stuff to it right now that you just simply didn't have when you started. So it's good to always go back and think about it and look. And a lot of times most of you don't have offers. Most people start off, don't always have an offer. So what current elements do you have? And that's really all the wireframe is. It's just taking different elements, different tools, different widgets, structures on the website, and stacking them in a logical manner. So do a little audit of that. And then, are you currently using all the tools you have access to in DSS? Kind of big tools, DSS, content management system, CRMs, the heart of what DSS is. Now, most of you are going to use the content management system. That is good. But you're using all of the elements of the content management system. So a couple of places I see people not even using the user experience tools that you may currently have access to. So good example here is, let's go, Kevin McManus. Let's come back to this page. The best example I have for this, and I like everybody to think about, accidents, injuries, broken, there, no. Personal injuries, traumatic brain injuries. All right. So many of you probably started with a minimal amount of practice areas, right? Like you just had car, truck, motorcycle accident. And that's typically within DSS, what you're going to see for, say, like this piece of content right here. That's what you're going to see down here in the,
Past it.
always spinning past it. All right. So down here in the service areas slash categories. Now, every service area you create automatically kind of creates a service area. So you assign that content to it. So if in our perfect world, you will have a blog or a practice area like Kevin here, practice area page. And then whenever you add an FAQ, when you assign the correct service area to that FAQ, whenever you sign an FAQ page to this practice area page, it will show what is connected to that service area. If you're just adding general, it's going to take whatever kind of general FAQs and add that. So make sure that when you're adding content to the site, you are assigning it to the correct service area. We see a lot of people that create random categories within DSS. See here, we only have two. Because you may say you do a blog about slip and fall or something, and you just write a blog about slip and fall, you may just assign it to general. Like you don't have a full slip and fall practice area page, but what you can do per practice area is when you have it is, say under libraries, if you wanted to add a unique category that's just for library, like say like community or something that is unique just to a certain individual area, you can add an individual category per type of content. So blog, FAQs, case results, things like that. But typically you're going to want to stay within the service areas because you want the information to be consistent. If you're in a practice area, you want to have information related to that. But say you're going to write one library article about a subject and you want to add a couple blogs. That's when you can add a category to it, but you have to go in and individually add those categories to those pages.
In addition to like providing an excellent user experience, because I'm on this page about, do I need a brain injury lawyer? And I see all these relevant links that are going to help me get better, further information on this topic because they're all assigned to the same practice area in DSS. In addition to that, it actually builds out the structure of your site in DSS so that when search engines are crawling your site, they see these internal links and the structure that you've built all connected to things in the same practice area or similar topics. And so you're not only providing an excellent user experience by utilizing that, but you're also actually setting yourself up for better results with SEO. So it's, all around that. I think people sometimes get a little bit irritated, like, oh, I have to assign this to a category. Like it's just another thing I have to do before I can hit publish. But it's really, the benefit is there if you use it. And it's the kind of stuff that you've got to lay that foundation every time you build a page, which can sometimes feel tedious, but it is going to give you a much better overall website and web structure.
Yep. Another thing to follow up on what Molly was talking about is, when Google crawls this site, when it comes to this practice area page, it's going to crawl every single one of these links and follow those, and then follow the links that are connected to those pages. Always describe it. NCAA bracket turned on its side. You got the homepage here, individual practice area pages under there, and then all the FAQs, blogs, videos, articles, you name it, are all connected to the web. And by kind of doing it, assigning it to the correct places, it's just Google's a bunch of dumb bots. They're just looking for the easiest way to find information. I'm sorry, Google, for insulting you on this Zoom webinar, because I know they are listening to me. Another area, as far as use of current tools you have access to within DSS, I see a lot of as far as user experience, information architecture, is not assigning elements to a page. So Molly, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically the practice area that you set and the modules you set on the side is what dictates the hierarchy. So if I make a pedestrian accident page and I only assign one module to it, every blog, everything related to that practice area will only have that particular element, correct?
I don't know if I fully understood the question, but I will answer as best I can. So when your site is built, we have basically a series of modules that are auto-populated to be assigned to the sidebar of all of your pages. And those are connected by practice area when you assign the categories. And then I think a lot of people tend to set it and forget it. They're like, oh, it auto-populates. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to add a more relevant offer that I just created or just finished publishing, or I don't need to change this testimonial to be more specific to what we're talking about. So I think that's what you're referring to is the modules and the sidebar. Is that right?
Well, yes, but what I'm really kind of leaning more toward is like someone will start a practice area page and only have one offer or like one module assigned to this sidebar. And then when they go to make like a blog or something, instead of, because the hierarchy goes from practice area page and like the service area page that you set and how these are put in here. So if you take all these out or you don't have any, whenever you add a blog, it's not going to have any of this other information. You have to kind of individually go back and add them per page.
That is, there are the ones that auto-populate, but they're not all going to populate every time. So you should be adding and updating and changing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. Is every time you add something, go down to the bottom where it's the modules and make sure that they are assigned and stacked kind of the way that you want them. And you have opportunities to customize them in some ways, depending on which version of website you have. Like, so instead of saying library, you could simply name it brain injury articles or different information. So you have some other more customization. Once again, that just swings on when your website was built. But the bigger elements that you don't have from an older website will be panel manager, whereas you can assign panels to different pages. And that's another thing. I don't see nobody doing this because it doesn't come default filled up with a bunch of elements. But if you've got a newer website.
Matt, can I interrupt you for 1 second before we get into this to ask a really good question from, I believe it's pronounced Glebe, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is it recommended to just assign one or more practice areas? What is the best practice according to SEO and user experience perspectives? Which I thought was a really good question. I'm happy to share my thoughts, which is basically there's no limit, but it's really about the intention behind it. So if you are assigning something to, if you're writing a blog post on, you know, a pedestrian injury and you have that's one of your sub practice areas under auto accidents, I would assign it first. You can do this. There's kind of a hierarchy of category and then subcategory that you can assign each piece to. I would assign it first to the one that's most relevant. And then if it's kind of a subset of a larger practice area, I would then assign it to that larger practice area so that that information can show when relevant in other related content across your site. But what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, that's the way I would do it. It's, you know, because usually with content, you try to rank for one thing, one subject, and it may be relevant to whatever, but whatever it is most relevant to, like if you write a piece of content about a back injury, but it also happens to talk about how someone was hit by a car and they got it back, or like pedestrian accident and got a back injury. But if the bulk of that information is, I want people looking for information about back injuries then you want to have that assigned as kind of the primary category to the page. So yeah. And you can see we have it kind of stacked in here where it's the service area or practice area, and then the subcategory under that. It all just depends on how you have the architecture set up. Not everybody has an injury section. Some people just have car accidents and then maybe make some categories of injuries or categories of some kind of subcategory. But
All right, yes, back to the panel manager.
Back to the good old panel manager, which nobody is using. We'll just pull up ours, and ours is a little bit over the top as far as the panel manager goes. All right. So same thing. Let's get to a blog. All right. So same thing as you go down. Before, we have so many panels, Jesus. So before you just had this modules, that's what you all have. You've got a content editor, you've got content, you got modules that you can kind of stack and adjust and optimize on the side. What a lot of you have and are not using, or some of you don't have, but this really only comes with either very late V4 or V5 is really, V5 is the ones that have this. As we see right here, this rich content editor is what we have on the page. And so that's, that's just the written content part. That's, we look on a page. So on a rich content is this. This is the content, everything under here, the modules, everything kind of fits inside the rich content editor. But you can assign panels that either go above or below that. So you can have the rich content editor, you can have panels, and you can stack the different panels on that page. Now, this is a very raw version. I was doing a coaching call earlier. We kind of were going through this, and they may have added a bunch of stuff. But once again, our friends at Consumer Law Group. So up here, we've got our headline. We've got all this information. We've got a couple panels. I thought this was a little much. But then underneath that, they've taken their FAQs that come from their homepage. So this panel, and then assigned it to an internal page. And they've also taken their case results and they took this. So that may be a little bit overboard, but that's something you can do with, with the panel editor. And so some of you have that. It may not be as elaborate. You may not have FAQs. You may not have everything, but you can still add, imagine just taking your offers. So if you've got a very nice offers page where we've got, a couple books or something right there. And so now we've got, and that's kind of what I drew up with and that's what I was kind of playing with this thing, was we went blog, header, video, contact form. That was one of the things. So let's think about the informational architecture. And that's where sometimes stacking it can be okay, kind of doing the wireframing offline. So yeah, we got headline, video player, content. We've got our H2s, contact form. I like contact form above the fold. Not that it's as big a deal as it used to be, but contact form, social proof through testimonials, more information. Idea being you've answered the question they've had. You've given them a chance to contact you. You've given them social proof about from some other people. And now it's like, okay, here's some other information related to this. And if you don't like that, it's not good enough. Here's an offer panel. Now you can have an offer panel directly related to this as well. And so you don't have to put everything. You don't have to make every page like a giant homepage and try to dominate that way. But it is a big part. And some of you had, and some of you may have gotten it set up, and you may have this, if you don't have any modules assigned to the page and you just have the rich content, or if you have this blank assigned to it, you may have blogs and information out there, or, stuff that you've created that is just flat. It is just a headline, some content, and a footer. and you are losing out on all of the different modules and panels that you can take advantage of within DSS. I see that a lot, actually. People that just don't know that they can do that. They don't understand the rich editor, assigning the rich content. And you can take this away. If you just want a stack of panels, like for a weird PPC page, you can take away the rich content editor, or you can stack everything on top and then put the content editor at the bottom. Just so there's lots of opportunities that I'm sure people are clicking on right now and not listening to me anymore because they're playing with their website.
One of the additional, what I find to be an awesome benefit of the panel editor is that, not only does it give you a lot more control over the design and just the aesthetics of each page on your site if you're using the panel editor, because you can drop different things in different places. You can, drag and drop everything in DSS to affect the way that the page looks. But also there's something called banner blindness that a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say suffer from, but a lot of people have nowadays where, we've all seen the retargeting, remarketing ads that show up in the top banner of whatever news website you're visiting. We've all seen all of the sidebar modules a billion times. And just like we forget to update these and add new ones, people tend to become kind of blind to those things. So adding different ways to get their attention to individual pages is a really good way to kind of refresh and reframe that offer that they might be blind to in one instance. Maybe they're the type of person that won't pay attention to things in the sidebar, or maybe they're the type of person that will stop at the 3/4 of the way down the page and they won't see what's at the bottom. So this lets you kind of decide where you're putting these calls to action or these different pieces of information within each page. And it just, you can change it up aesthetically every now and then.
Yep. Which leads very well to website clutter. So we're going from you're not using enough of the tools and the elements that you have to is it too damn busy? Ask yourself, do you work better or worse in a cluttered environment that isn't of your own making? Keyword, some of you are sitting in very messy rooms right now. My room is messy. It looks good, but trust me, things are pushed to the side. If it's not of your own making, can you do it? And a confused mind does not buy. So the idea being, do you have too many elements on a page? Like, do you have extra graphics? Do you have video autoplay? Are you embedding videos in the middle of a thing right before you have one video above? Too many colors? Are you, is it just too busy? Do you try to put every panel for your homepage, put 4 panels, content, modules, and then the rest of your panels on there? So don't go crazy. Just think about that confused mind. And I'm going to have some principles for you to think about here at the end about how to actually apply some of this. But then talked a little about earlier, do you just have too much text with not enough elements? Do you just have a stream of text? I mean, just inserting an image into that will be better because different types of readers. Some people are going to skim. Some people are going to want to read in depth. And I'm sure if you're a skimmer and you just blink and it is just looks like a dictionary of text, you're not even going to bother doing it, especially if you're not adding your H2s, you don't have H1s, you don't have internal links. If you're just pulling up just a raw strip of just as much text as possible, that's a problem. So let's not do that. All right. Is the informational architecture on the page displayed in a logical manner? So someone lands on your page. Did you put your offer panel at the very top of a blog about brain injuries? Do you think they really want to download your book right away? Do you want to at least get in touch with you? Are you putting irrelevant information on the page? So just think about what is the logical manner. Like that's what I did with this page, as I talked about. They land on it, headline, video for someone who wants to watch video, content for someone who wants to watch content, give them a chance to contact you, social proof, further information, offer. Some of you may have a different idea. You may have a different type of practice area. You may have just learned something about your particular best clients and things that work better for them. And you test it, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. If you've got a page that's a lost leader and you get tons of interactions on that page, but tons of traffic, but not a lot of conversions, try testing some of this stuff on these pages. Test the headlines, move the elements around. You're not going to be losing anybody. Or, if you've got a page that is converting, do some of these things and test for 3 months and then test for another 3 months. Kind of switch it up. If your work is seasonal, do it around the seasonal work. Like you DUI guys, December is a popular month for you. So let's make sure that we are logical information architecture. Does your call to action match the information on that landing page? Big one I see. Unlike, let's see. Yeah, so like this, good call to action. Need help? Get your confidential knowledge review of your case. Get started now. When you put these, and depending on which version you have, you can adjust some of these. So if you're a DUI lawyer, simple way to think about it, if you have a newer version website and you've got this call to action and you put the custom call to action page on a DUI site or on a DUI page, does this call to action say, get help with your DUI? If you put it on your drug page, you're like, need help with a drug arrest, like get the help you need now. So you can adjust the language to mix that. Same thing with your contact forms on offer pages as well, making sure the headlines and some of that information matches. Make sure that your mini contact forms that are on your sidebar modules match. You may have changed. You may have started this and been like, whatever, put up what you want, but you may have a new tagline. You may have a different perfect client that you're trying to talk to. So go back and check out your mini contact forms, which are, Kevin doesn't have them. Okay. Bad Kevin.
At the
It's
bottom.
going to be
He had one in the footer.
do you have one there? Okay. So like here, or you'll also see them on the, you can assign them to the sidebar models. I always like it at the top. So here he's driving right to the book. I kind of like the contact form, but making sure that if you have the ability to have those updates or the kind of customize the call to action, make sure it's the same.
It's also one of those things that like nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to go through all of their forms and thank you pages and see what needs to be fixed. But honestly, like once you start, you're going to realize like, yeah, I made this 6 years ago and I haven't touched it. Or I made this 4 years ago and I haven't, or however far along you are, you're going to realize that there's stuff that just needs to get updated over time. I'm still finding, we updated our logo in 2018 and I'm still finding on live pages, live thank you pages, live thank you emails that we have the old logo and old templates. So it just looks dated and it doesn't give a great impression that we are not taking enough time to go through our pages and update these things, for somebody to want to work with us. So the same is going to be reflective of you. Make sure that you are putting your best image forward.
There you go. Don't repeat the same information multiple times on a page. Seeing that, some people will add modules, put a bunch of blog modules, and then they'll take their information FAQ module and kind of double up on the page. So avoid multiple bits of information. And good question I saw was, will it take more, take someone, it's supposed to be more than 5 seconds to figure out what web page is about? So if someone lands on that page, can they understand it? And if you're stacking your information, or if your headline is just like 3 words, or if it's way too much, if it's like 2 sentences long, people aren't going to read that and they're going to scan. So are your H2s, do your the headline on your form. Who knows what they're going to look at, but ask someone, send it to someone, make a page and send it. Be like, if I, in 5 seconds, show it to them for 5 seconds and tell them, what was that page about? And see, try that. That will blow your mind, because how many people contact you who went to your website, were on the pages for like 2 minutes and didn't realize you were in a different state? Just think about that to measure against, can they figure it out in 5 minutes? You got people that stay on for a long time and can't really figure it out. All right, so what to do about it? Let's see. Where's my pages? I don't know. Where's my Google Page Speed page? Okay. I guess this is slightly out of order. All right, so Google Page Speed stuff. And I'll get to the Google Page Speed stuff in a little more detail in a second. Things to do about Google's page speed: audit third-party code. I'll get to that. Audit old content. Audit images. I'll guarantee you got a lot of big old images, and that's actually, I think it might be the next user group is going through an image audit. I don't know if me and Molly have said or not yet, but I know it's a highly requested thing these days. But when was the last time any of you looked at how many of you had added tracking cookies from so many years ago, haven't used it? How many of you added widgets from some like local newspaper who was like, add this widget to the site for this thing? How many of you have never erased a piece of content? How many added images that you just downloaded off of Google and just uploaded right to DSS? Like, this is the not fun part, but I'm telling you, audit. Like, that is going to be the best way. It's just like when you're training someone. Okay, come and do your bench press, squat, deadlift. All right, now I know where you're at. Now we know where to go to move forward. I can't describe a program for you if I don't know where you're at. If we're just exercising, then we're not training. I want you to be training and getting better at this and kind of improving with a goal in mind, not just doing marketing for the sake of doing marketing.
Well, that's a really great example, Matt, because one of the kind of things that we see a lot about images that people get hung up on, we get hung up on, we've just recently gone back and done an alt text audit to make sure all of our images have alt text, inappropriate alt text. We're actually describing what's on the image, but it is a little bit like, yeah, okay, you can get by with massive images. You can get by without alt text. You can get by with all of this stuff, but are you going to ultimately cause more damage to your website or to your knees, for example? Like, yes, you're working out other parts of your legs, but you're hurting something really vital to you. And then it's going to be much harder to go back and undo it in the long run rather than just doing it right from the jump. So yeah, that's a really good example. And I think images are frustrating because it's another thing that's like, nobody really wants to spend the time working, resizing multiple times just because they didn't get it quite the right size from the start, but it's worth the effort.
Yeah. So all you marketing directors who have to go to your boss and tell them why you spent 4 hours resizing and adding text to images, and they just like, what? Like, what? It took you 4 hours, and like, they don't understand, it. So just tell them you're optimizing a website. Go with it. and then this is kind of a good way to think about kind of content, user experience. Any elements, anything you put on the page serve one of four purposes: to tell the audience what the page is about, to tell them how your services will benefit them, to tell them what action they should take, and to establish authority on the topic the page is about. And so we kind of talked about all the stuff you have, right? Like, now some of you are going, man, I wish I had this tool. I wish I had that tool. I didn't know I could use this tool. This is just kind of a general, and I'm sure there's probably a billion other ways to think about it, but this is just kind of my way that I thought was pretty logical to think about. Should you add this and why? So don't go crazy, but as long as you ask yourself those kind of rules whenever you're adding something, it's principles. You go through the page, set it up, and say, all right, well, did I tell them what action I want them to take? Not just say, contact me. Did I say, contact me for, to, get your life back together? Contact me before it's too late. What have you done more than just submit, contact me, little things? Or maybe you want them to share this page. Maybe you've got some really cool thing that you want people to share in the community, and that's kind of a hard call to action. Not going to be the first one. Business comes first. But then establishing the authority is always a good one too. So that's your testimonials, that's your case results, which none of you are really probably doing a really good job of case results. Highly recommend the case results. It is social proof. It is SEO. But like Molly was saying, nobody wants to do it because it is really hard, because all you marketing directors have to go out and you got to grab the attorney and say, hey, tell me about this case. And then you got to write it up and you got to get them to approve it. But it is the juiciest, it is the best type of content. It's great content to be shared, through, non website means. So like sending out emails or, hell, just printing. If you print something out, you give to a chiropractor, someone you work with, and you've got a story, someone with a back problem, this guy recommended to you, on the back is the story of this person and a picture of them leaping and going, yay. Same thing with podiatrists. If you're, people are like, what about this? Hey, here's this laser, little front elements. This laser does this. It doesn't do that. Backside, 3 stories from people about how you came in and the laser helped them with inflammation or toenail fungus or something like that. So this is good stuff that can be applied across multiple different channels.
And how many of us have slip discs in our back or neck pain that we have spent years dealing with, and we've never gotten relief, and we're ready to finally do something about it once and for all because we're so sick of it. And you find that story that just rings so true, and it's exactly what you've experienced. I got in a car accident X years ago and suffered from this for 4 years, never thought I'd find relief, and Dr. Sully helped me through it, and I'm living my life again, and I have mobility back. And those are the kinds of things that people connect with. And if they see themselves in that case story, they're going to make a connection with you. So it's a really good one, really good piece of content.
Well, I have to say it just because I feel necessary, but totally stole this idea from Dave Freeze, who explained it as it is an elemental drive in us. The cavemen who listened to the story about how to get water went and got the water. The ones who didn't were eaten by the tigers or killed by the other village. That is why we love story. How many CSIs are there, and how many times have they said the same story? Days of our lives have been running the same story for 50, 60 years. It's because people identify because they're very human stories. Don't ask me about that. All right, so maintaining page speed. All right, so foster web marketing. Let me get a little bit, let me just dabble in the page speed a little bit. All right, web. No, let me find it. Where's it at? All right, so a little bit about page speed and some of the updates that Google has. Now, we've got a good article about this, but I felt like this was just a very simplistic way that it lays it out. Kind of the different changes coming. One is loading. So how fast does it load? And we'll address that and kind of how DSS really affects that. Really that's going to be the main thing, is the load, how fast it loads, how fast it paints, and that'll be more relevant. Interactivity, good user experience. So yes, it may make a button show up, but can you click on the button? Is it usable? Is it just visually there? So kind of the a measurable for them. And then visual stability, somebody scrolling through real fast on a slow connection, does it keep up? So it really, like the big changes in Google, the page speed is looking at how quickly the website loads to measure user experience, and then some of the internal elements. And that's kind of the big thing that we're looking with here. And now how we address that and how you can address that. A couple things. The best way to address it will be get a V5 website. Now, some of you got newer websites, you can upload it, but the biggest, well, not the biggest, probably the biggest thing about that is you can't do this on all this other stuff you can do on your own. The V5 site, that's just it's the model of car that you got, and it's lazy loading. So implementing lazy loading on your website will have a major impact. And what that does is essentially, we've been looking at Google and trying to figure out everything that they want us to do and how to show it. And so things that don't need to show up right away, they lazy load. They kind of upload it a little bit later. And so it's kind of a way to manipulate it so that we're presenting the right information to Google first. And just simply, if you got an older website, it's like having a really old car. Like there's just ain't no Bluetooth in there, and it costs more to add the Bluetooth than just to get a new car. Some of you got an older site, it'll be a little easier. If your site's more than 2 years old, you probably need a full redesign. But here's something I want to emphasize with this. So I put the pressure on, let me pull it off a bit. We do not know exactly how much weight Google will give to this. If right now, just because in a simple way, if there's 200 things Google looks at on whether or not to rank you, if this page speed is 10, I don't know if they're going to move it to 2 or 9. And they may move it to 9, and then after 6 months of testing, they move it back to 10. It's one of those things we don't know, but the idea is Google never tells you. Okay, Google never tells you what they're doing. And so the fact that they did, they've put everyone in a bind. And if they make the change and people get a better user experiences based on the changes in the rankings or whatever weight they give it, they're going to give it more weight. They're going to say, we did a good job. So they're going to use you as a beta tester before you do this. So that's kind of the one thing we have to do is really it's the V5 website for Google page speed. The biggest things you can do, we'll talk a little bit about the third party, but images, we already talked a little bit about it, but compress, resize, and format. That's kind of the biggest differences. This imagecompressor.com is a place you can upload. I think we've done this before. We can compress the images. Here is a great blog about, I don't know, Molly, can you have that? Can you put that in the chat?
I can't.
Well, let me put that in the chat. Yay. So this is a great blog that really talks about images as you put them on your website and how to think about a mobile versus desktop, landscape, up and down. So making sure the image fits right on the page. And yeah. And the next gen formats for images. So it's not just an image, is making sure that the formats are correct. A lot of PNG old format stuff out there. So basically, whenever we kind of put a new site, or if you are adding images to your site, make sure it's one of these newer web formats. And there are multiple other ones, but these are just kind of the top ones that come to mind. And that's the one thing you can control that Google has to store and pull up and track. DSS does some level of compression, but it really is recommended to do it before you add it, especially the sizing. It just makes it a lot easier. So if you have any questions about that, read that blog. It's a great blog. It's got really good information about the sizing of the images on the site. Then we've got what we already talked about, minimizing the use of third-party code. Just think about it like this. Every time you have to wait and you have to Google or the bots or whatever have to pull data from a third party, send or receive, that means they're waiting. So no one on here has WordPress. So if you've got a WordPress site and you've got 20 plugins, you're going to need to scale those down, or it's going to take some of those companies a couple years maybe to figure out how to adjust some of those. Some people will figure it out, some people won't. Depends on how much information you're kind of passing back and forth. But I'll bet you a lot of you have some random old third-party tracking cookies and codes and widgets and things that you threw on from someone for free across your site. But the images and the third-party stuff is the biggest thing you can affect. The V5, that just comes with the newer sites. And that is all I have for today.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And thank you guys so much for joining us and for the questions. I hope you guys found this series helpful and informative. It is, it's a lot managing a website. It's not an easy task. And we feel your pain. We're here to try and make it, at the very least, make sense and, give you the tools you need to succeed. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. We will see you next month, where I'm going to be surprised about what we're present images, I think, right? We'll do images. We'll talk about images among other things, but thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.